Look at this equation. At first glance, this equation seems correct, right? But this equation is actually wrong. The equation is not balanced. In this video, we are going to learn how to balance chemical equations step by step. Before we start balancing equations, let's understand something. Why do we balance them at all? Why can't we simply write an equation and leave it as it is? To answer that, imagine you are counting students in a classroom. Suppose there are 30 students before the class starts. Without anyone entering or leaving the room, can there be 35 students? No, the number of students stays the same. The same idea applies to atoms in a chemical reaction. Atoms don't disappear and new atoms don't suddenly appear. They simply rearrange to form new substances. That is why we need to balance chemical equations. Now let's solve the equation we saw in the beginning. H2 plus O2 forms H2O. The first rule is very simple. Never guess. Count the atoms first. On the left hand side, there are 2 hydrogens and 2 oxygen. And on the right hand side, there are 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. Hydrogen is already balanced, but oxygen is not balanced. There are 2 oxygen on the left hand side and 1 oxygen on the right hand side. So should we change the formula from H2O to H2O2? No, that is the biggest mistake students make. Never change the chemical formula. You are only allowed to place a coefficient, a natural number in front of the formula to make them equal. If we put 1 here, the equation will not change. So the smallest natural number we can put here is 2. So let's do H2 plus O2 forms 2H2O. Now count again. On the left hand side there are 2 hydrogens and 2 oxygen, and on the right hand side there are 4 hydrogens and 2 oxygen. Now oxygen has become balanced and hydrogen has become unbalanced. So to balance hydrogen we need to place a number here in front of H2 to make them equal. We can multiply this by 2 to make them equal. So the final equation becomes 2H2 plus O2 forms 2H2O. Count the atoms again. On the left hand side there are 4 hydrogens and 2 oxygen, and on the right hand side there are 4 hydrogens and 2 oxygen. Both sides have the same number of atoms. The equation is now balanced. So this is the correct and final equation. Now let's try a different example. Fe plus O2 forms Fe2O3. We will solve it together. The first step is to count the atoms on both sides. On left hand side there is 1 Fe and 2 oxygen, and on the right hand side there are 2 iron and 3 oxygen. Both iron and oxygen are not balanced, so we need to balance both. But we are starting with the oxygen first, because if you start with the oxygen, if you balance oxygen first, then the balancing for the rest of the elements will become easier. As we can see, the number here is 2 and this is 3. So if we multiply this by 3 and this by 2, both will become equal. Both will become 6. So the equation becomes Fe plus Fe will not change because we are balancing oxygen first. 3O2 forms 2Fe2O3. Now count the atoms again. There is 1 Fe on left hand side and 6 oxygen, and on the right hand side there are 4 iron and 6 oxygen. So oxygen has become equal but iron is not equal. So if we multiply here by 4, then iron will also become equal. So the final equation becomes 4Fe plus 3O2 forms 2Fe2O3. So this is the correct and final balanced equation. So always remember there are 3 golden rules. First rule is count the atoms on both sides. Second rule is never ever change the formula. You are only allowed to place a coefficient, a number in front of the formula to make them equal. You are not allowed to change it. And the third rule is check again. After balancing, after putting a number, count the atoms on both sides again. Let's take a last example. Zn plus HCl forms ZnCl2 plus H2. First step is to count the atoms on both sides. It's your turn. Pause the video and try balancing this equation yourself. On the left hand side there is 1 zinc. There is 1 zinc, 1 hydrogen and 1 chlorine. And on the right hand side there is 1 zinc, 2 hydrogens and 2 chlorine. So zinc is already balanced, but hydrogen and chlorine are not balanced. There are 1 hydrogen, 1 chlorine on the left hand side and 2 on the right hand side. So if we place 2 here in front of HCl, then the equation will be balanced. So the final equation becomes Zn plus 2HCl forms ZnCl2 plus H2. 1 zinc on right, 1 zinc on left, 2 hydrogens on left, 2 on right, and 2 chlorine on left and 2 on right. So the equation is now balanced. This is the correct and final equation. So in this video we learned how to balance equations and why equations are balanced. Here's your homework. Try to balance this equation yourself. Al plus O2 forms Al2O3 and comment your answer below. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching and I will see you in my next video. Subscribe.